So yes, I am thinking about anatomy. Yes, I am thinking about physiology, but I'm trying to take it a little bit further. And okay, let's express that joint, right? And let's express this, how this arm moves. But let's go a little bit further and let's see how we can play with it to make it unique, to make it stand out. And I'm really thinking about it not so much from a developer perspective. I'm thinking about it from a player perspective. And I know developers think about things from player perspective all the time. But I'm literally trying to go, I'm not going, how are we going to do this technically? How are we going to achieve this? Those are all things that need to conform to the concept, right? Out of all the brilliant games I've ever played, there's a brilliant concept at the beginning, and then they mold the technology to adapt. So you're going to mold the process to achieve your artistic aims. And I know that might sound a little bit backwards when it comes to development, but the thing is, like, if I was talking to a friend of mine who's an indie game developer, and he's working on a game right now, and he has a really cool story, has really cool design elements, but the game itself is very much like other games that we played. And we had this discussion together, and he was feeling that way, and I go, because he's worrying about all the technical parameters that he has to hit, which you do have to consider, right? But you need to have vision first. You need to put that first, and then go, okay, how do we get the technology to work for us to achieve this goal? Then you go back and you go, okay, well, you know what? This isn't doable, but this is. And it forces you to creatively think. And at the end of our conversation, he's like, okay, I feel a lot better with where I'm at right now. I feel like I can work with this, and it's not going to be a boring game. But that was the meat of our conversation, was really, what do we put first? Vision or tech? And tech doesn't matter if the vision's not there. You can build the most beautifully, technically executed game, and if there's no artistic vision or the artistic vision is boring, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to want to jump in unless the tech is so fantastic that, that it doesn't matter what sort of platform you deliver the tech into. Are you guys following me, or am I going off on wild tangents? Is this stuff hitting home for you? There's similar conversations that revolve around that kind of hits in the same area of like form over function, right? But I think I don't think it's so clear cut as that, as form over function. I think it's form, right? So, or form or aesthetics have to come first. That has to come first. After that, you examine the function. How are you going to get there technically? Then you go back to the form and you re-examine the form and you say, okay, is this going to work like I thought it was going to work? Or how can we achieve this with what we've sussed out in development or in tech development? And right now, even I'm looking at just more shapes than I am thinking about, is this crustacean? Is it a dragon? Is it whatever? I'm looking at, okay, I like these sharp points. It's sort of a cheap way of going, okay, this thing's evil in design. Sharp points indicate danger. That's how our brain reads it, right? Anything that has sharp edges is dangerous because we learned that as a kid. starting to arrive at some cool stuff in here, but I'm also starting to think too small. So let's start getting a little crazy with this. Start making some of these forms larger. Don't want to destroy my read, but I do want to do something more interesting. Now I'm starting to think some sort of like sea conch or spiny seashell. Let's look at it from the viewer's perspective and see what we're looking at. All right, so there's some stuff to see there. Let's go ahead and shrink that down a little bit. All right. I don't know if I've dropped enough spikes on this guy. Let's go ahead and pull this out and make some more interesting things down here. Like I said, I'll end up reconciling this somehow. Right now I'm just looking at shapes, keeping it very loose. I still haven't pulled up any reference. You know, aside from like my initial like, what am I going to feed my subconscious? Let's look at what's going on here in the front and see if I've developed any interesting lines. I kind of like what's going on here, so I'm going to emphasize that. I'm not sure what that is yet. Some sort of shield. Give that a little bit of volume. Let's go ahead and give him like a squidgy belly too. I'm gonna give him a total soft underbelly. Like this is maybe a weak spot on him if you can make it underneath him without getting smashed. And maybe this mimics something of a lobster tail moving into like shrimp legs or tentacles, or I'm not even sure yet. Definitely want a little belly. Maybe this is an egg sac. It was Simon who was saying little things crawling out from the creature. Maybe that's something where that can happen. All right, so I'm looking over the whole thing, seeing if it's too much or if there's not enough going on. And even though from like say here, it may look like it's too busy, I think that, I mean, these are my largest forms that I'm blocking in right now. So I'm thinking there's going to be, you know, my secondary forms, it's going to be filling all this in. So let's look from here. I'm looking for weak areas at this level. So that's sort of a weak spot. I want to pull something out there. So where is an opportunity for that? Let's go ahead and say there's a bony joint there. Let's have a little spike come off of that. All right, under these guys, so I want to elaborate on these joints here. And I'm using these spikes because it's an element that I've already been using and I want to keep on reusing in various ways. Although I introduced something new, which is a sort of bony plate. I have it here and here. I'm going to look for opportunities to use that too. So maybe this is one right here. It doesn't have to be huge, but I can just do a little bit. And pull this in. And while I'm going through this, I have no problems. If you have any thoughts about your own creatures, you have questions about it, I have no problems talking about that too while I'm working on this. Otherwise, it's just really me working and talking about my thought process, which can be helpful to you guys. I mean, that's part of what you guys are paying for. So. But I just want to let you know that it's fine to interrupt me and sort of ask me questions, and I can still work while doing that. All right, I'm going to push forward some of your comments so you guys can all see it. All right, Marcos, in the games, the models of NPCs and monsters are all already in the scale, or does it matter that much? I'm not really sure what you mean, Marcos. Like, no, I mean, let me look at this. Let me read it one more time. In the games, the models of NPCs and monsters are all already in the scale, or does it matter that much? You mean, well, are you saying are they pre-scaled outside of the game engine before they're imported? As far as comparatively to whatever else is, like, you know, in the Maya world space, that it's actual scale in the world space of Maya? Okay. The answer is no, it doesn't matter. Scale it once you bring it into, I mean, you want, I don't go larger than the grid inside of mine. That's already huge, and it can cause issues if you start going up beyond that. Like, we have something that's like 1,000% the size of the grid, and you're modeling on it. There's issues with the camera, there's issues with perspective, certain things don't work the way you expect them to. So I usually go somewhere between, on something large, I'll go, you know, somewhere between 20% of the grid inside of Maya, which can change size, I'm talking about the default grid size, to 80% of the grid size inside of Maya. Inside of ZBrush, I try and keep things to the same scale as like, I work a lot off of these guys, right? And so I match scale to this. I match scale to these projects. The reason being is that, you know, if I go too large inside of ZBrush, then all of a sudden my Dynamesh resolution, I can't get my creature low poly enough with just Dynamesh, or I end up having to. This is the main reason why. But there's other things, other issues too that arise when you work on something too large inside of ZBrush. So you don't want to sculpt on it actual scale. You don't want to model it actual scale. You want to scale it when you bring it into the game engine. And then Simon, was that a long enough answer for you, Marcos? In in the wait, would be really cool in the final image to have like some arrows sticking out of it on those bony plates. Awesome suggestion. Thanks, man. Thinking over gameplay aspects as in vulnerable zones, laying eggs may be the whole transformation. The nearer you get, the closer you get to the end of the battle. Yeah, that's all good stuff to think about while you're designing. I mean, it's one thing to just be handed a concept and you have to implement it, and you have to model it, and you hit all the technical points. But I don't think that's what I want. That's not what I wanted to do for this class, and I don't think it's what you guys wanted to do purely. I mean, sure, you wanted the technical skills to perform different things inside of Maya and ZBrush and our other applications that we're working with, so that you can implement this inside of an engine. But I think the other part, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think the more interesting part of it, while all that stuff is important, the interesting part is the creation process too. How do you think about it? How do you approach it? How do you create a boss that's cool, that's this large? How do you fill all that in? You know, so you have to dive into things with a lot of thought in mind. You know, with a lot of pre-thought, right? So preconception a little bit, but don't let your preconception overrule, dictate exactly what you're going to do all the way through the entire process. But you have to build that lore. You have to really think about what you're doing, and you have to sort of think about the player more. You really have to consider the player. You know, and that's you know, the player is really who's telling you what you need to do, and the player that you're picturing in your brain is you, and it's all your experiences with video games, and it's all your experience with, you know, when you're a kid and you're playing this, and you're like, oh man, that game sucked. Why did that game suck? You know, what was it about outside of gameplay? If it was the art, why did the art suck? Was it just poorly done? Was it technically a failure? Did the performance lag? Were the creatures just lame? I mean, I played some games that I love, and I hate the art. You know. All right, I think I'm in a good spot here. I might take maybe a couple little things. And drag them out like that. And I'm not really dealing with asymmetry yet, but asymmetry is something to consider. You know, you may want some asymmetrical elements that are coming out. I'm not lazy with turning off my symmetry or sculpting. It's just I'm one of those people that happens to like seeing symmetry in designs. Almost done. And then I'm going to start working on features.